Welcome everyone to the January 2025 webinar. I think this marks pretty close to 5 years. I didn't actually go back and check, but I know it was during COVID that we started the webinar series, and we continue to be able to share information with the community on a monthly basis. My name is Graham Akers. I'm the chair of OpenNTF this year, and with me from the board today are Roberto Bocadoro and Jesse Gallagher. Our topic today is the new AutoInstall features overview from Domino 14.5 AutoInstall was available in version 14. Daniel is going to correct me if I'm wrong there. We're doing a deep dive into all the good admin techie details of how to do the AutoInstall stuff. So Gary Rheaume's team from HCL, including Daniel and Dick Annichiarico, are here with us today, and let's get into it. So we'll do a quick couple of welcome slides, and then we'll get right into the presentation, and we'll save Q&A for the end. Just very quickly, thank you to the OpenNTF sponsors, HCL and Prominic, primary amongst them. They make contributions to help keep the organization running and helping us supporting the community, and we thank them for their contribution. With respect to the community, everybody on this call is part of the community. Everybody watching this video on YouTube is part of the community. And you're all able to contribute in whatever way you see fit. So please do join us. If you're not already part of the Discord server, I'll share that link in just a second. But we all learn from each other, and we all benefit from sharing ideas, even if it's an idea that's been shared before. David Leedy said this many, many years ago, that you can share some information about something that's already been put out into the community if you have a different way of thinking about it. Again, we all learn from each other's ideas, so please do join in and contribute. A couple of notes about upcoming events. Next week, we're starting a new series. This is something that we're doing in conjunction with HCL called Open Mic with the HCL developers. It's very much along the lines of Ask the Developers from Lotusphere's past. And each month, we're going to pick a specific topic and have the actual dev team from HCL on the call to take your questions. And it's really going to be an open discussion. It'll be moderated. So basically, you essentially get in a virtual line to ask your question. And we're going to give it a go and see how it turns out. We've got approximately 6 months worth of topics already lined up. But we'll be looking for your contributions from the community in terms of ideas for what other topics we should be talking about. So the first one is next Thursday in this time slot. If you can't make that time slot, we're going to make an email address available that you can send your questions to so that they can be asked during the session and then recorded, and those sessions will be available on YouTube afterwards. So please do make a point of joining us. The webinars page on openntf.org is where you will find information about the open mic sessions and the link to be able to register and sign up to join us. And then in February, we have Bernd Gewehr, who is a customer from Germany, who is an HCL ambassador, has been for many years. He's going to do next month's webinar topic, which is titled Go Do Crazy Innovative Things with the Notes Client. And Bernd's team, I know, really pushes the envelope with things that they have in terms of integration with Notes. So I'm really looking forward to that. That'll be on February 20th. And then our next open mic session will be on February 27th. This was what I mentioned earlier about Discord. So we have a Discord server. That is where the community comes to participate in online forums, at least the ones that are hosted by OpenNTF. Of course, there are forums that are hosted by HCL as well. But make a point of using this link and jumping in, and there's active discussions around administration and development and a wide variety of other topics related to the HCL product suite that you can ask about. Okay, asking questions. So we are recording this session. It is going to be available on YouTube. Please do use the Go to Questions panel to ask your question. The idea is that we want to have the question asked and answered in the video. If we run out of time for questions, we will do a text conversation that we post up into the webinars page that you can refer to later. And the number one rule is that we focus on the topic at hand. We're not here to talk about future features or something that isn't related to the topic that we're presenting today. So please do keep your questions on topic, but fire them all away and we will ask and answer at the end of the presentation. And with that, we will hand it over.
So
Okay.
I'll start things off. Thank you and good day. My name is Gary Rheaume. I'm the development lead for the HCL Domino server total cost of ownership team, the TCO team. And today we are pleased to present you with an overview of the Domino 14 and 14.5 auto update and auto install feature, which simplifies the process of keeping your Domino server environments up to date with the latest versions of our software to make sure that you have the latest fixes, features, and of course security patches. The auto update tool lets you see when there are new versions of software available, and then you choose to schedule when and how you want those updates to be downloaded and deployed into your environment. Auto Update handles all of the nitty-gritty details of doing the downloads from the MyHCL software portal, distributing the software to your Domino servers, and managing the installation of software within your Domino domain to bring it up to date. So we do all the grunt work, but you can take all the credit. We first introduced this capability in Domino 14, where we had the ability to do the download and distribution portions of it. In 14.5, we've now completed the feature, and we can actually automate and run and manage the installation and updates of your servers as well. I am joined today by the two main developers of this feature, Dick Annichiarico and Daniel Nashed, who are going to walk you through these capabilities, and we will do some demos as well. We welcome your feedback on the feature itself, also on the user experience of the management application, and as always, your questions and suggestions for improvements. So let me turn it over to Daniel to get you started.
Thank you, Gary, for the great introduction. Hello, everyone. Gary already started to give you a little sneak peek of what we are doing. We want to recap really first what has been shipped in 14.0 as the auto update feature, and it consists of multiple components, as Gary said. And this is really the ground work for the full feature, which includes the auto install, which is available since early access 1 of 14.5, and it got feature completed in early access 2. So what you see today is almost everything that was planned. Maybe there could be a little tweak here and there in the UI or a detail of a feature, and that's where we are looking for your feedback. So if this is really what you wanted or if there is something missing. The base functionality, and I will go through this in a minute, really consists of multiple features working hand in hand. The starting point is really the notification. The idea was that we push out information to every customer about new software, and that new software information goes into your names NSF, and you will see that in a minute. We wanted to list all the software. We want to make software available for download, distribute it to servers, and then finally, in 14.5, update Domino servers on Windows and Linux. So let's have a very quick look into that. But before we do that, we have something new which came up in parallel to the 14.0 beta release. To be able to download software, you need a portal that has an API that allows you to download software automatically. So there was the FlexNet portal, which had all the software, but it had no API, no automation for download. So we really needed something new. And you all hopefully know the new portal. It's the MyHCL software portal. It's a way nicer UI, much easier to navigate, really quick and snappy. So it's based on AWS, so it's worldwide available and quick to download around the world. And it really is the base for us to be able to use that functionality. That API is documented. So I went and built a download script, which is also used in the community container project. You don't need to implement that on your own. There is a script available, and we have other integrations coming. They are not part of the product. They are in open source, and they help you to download software on top of what we're doing here with Auto Update. It looks like this. Here's the latest screenshot. I think you all know that already. There's one detail that we want to make you aware of. This is something that is important in the UI already, but it's harder to see when you are in a different software product. So when you're in Auto Update and you want to download software and the software license has not been accepted yet, you will receive an error message in Auto Update that says this particular download can't be fulfilled because you didn't accept the license agreement. So for most of the error cases that you see, we have this pattern where you see the error status with an icon, a proper worded, hopefully, error message, and then a proposed action. So in this case, you have to go into the UI and have for each different license accept it once. So you don't need to do that all the time. It's only once, and once per customer. So that's a little information before we really start, right? This is the base where we download software. So let's have a very quick look at the Auto Notify and also the setup for the whole infrastructure. So the Auto Notify is really a separate feature that works even without Auto Install and Auto Update. It only needs a configuration in the Domino directory profile where you also enable the whole feature. So first of all, you specify a designated or download server. In this case, I have chosen Linux Lab Dino EU. And that server is your main server for the whole infrastructure, for downloading software, for downloading latest information. And the first feature was the Notify feature. In this screenshot, you see Notify, Download, and the new Update functionality. So when you want to have the full feature enabled, you need to specify Notify, Download, and Update. So, but let's stay for a second with this Notify feature. The Notify feature will download a product info into your names when you enable it. And in the navigation, you see product information, and there's one document per product, which is always updated. You see here, it's the latest version. It's pushed out from HCL and pulled down from servers that have this functionality enabled. That information is stored in a JSON file, and the JSON file is on a HCL server. It's the same server that's also hosting the fixed list database. You don't need to go there, but you could open this manually. That file is a JSON file which is signed by HCL, and the code has the public key baked in a secure way so that it can't be tampered. So the first thing that happens is it's downloading this product catalog, verifies it, and then imports it into notes documents in the names NSF. Once you enabled the second part of the functionality, the download functionality, another setup. So first of all, what happens, an Auto Update NSF is created for you. It's a domain-wide replica, but only created on the main server. So we have a main server approach. You can cluster it, but it's one database that is not intended to be replicated on all servers because it needs space, and we don't want to have replication and save conflicts when status documents are updated. So here you see a server document and a software document for a server download. And in my case here, you see it's the latest software, it is available, it has been downloaded, and this document has an attachment. All the information is in here. And this is implemented by another file, the software JWT, which works exactly the same way as the product info. It's just a separate file located on the same server. So that was about software documents. The next part is how are servers working. So first of all, as I mentioned, we have the Domino download server. The Domino download server is the main server that schedules all the downloads, all the distributions, and then you have target servers. Target servers are servers which actually install the software on their own server. Of course, the auto update download server can be also a target server, because you want to update that server also. You should, but you should do that separately. You should not schedule it with other servers, because if that server is down, those servers can't update their status. There's a clustering functionality, but it's really better to keep that server separate. So the download server does all the scheduling, and each target server will look for jobs for a request in its own server document, and each server is responsible for updating their own server document. That server document is not the server document in the names NSF. It's on purpose a separate document for multiple reasons. One reason is it contains additional information that is specific to this application, and we want to have all the information in one place. You have the cluster name, the platform, the capabilities, the OS version, everything is in here. On top of this, this document is also used to schedule and trigger updates. That means it has a status and it has a target version. And when you schedule the update, this document is updated. And this is the main document that contains all the scheduling information. You also see a history tab here that we'll see later. This is really an embedded view that shows the history documents all in one place, that you have one document and one place to go to. As I said earlier, it's a central replica approach, and all the documents are updated in time and not through replication. There's one additional document that is important. It's the configuration document. You find it on the lower left of the navigation. It is the main configuration of the database, where you specify which software you want to see in the catalog that is listed. So you specify which products to show, which platforms you're interested, which languages, because there are a lot of languages, there are a lot of packages, and you only want to see the packages that you're interested in. By default, this is just English and Windows and Linux, and Domino and Nodes. And you just go in here, change the settings, and then dynamically those documents will be updated, and you see all the documents in the view. The next part that is important here is to get the downloads working with the MyHCL software server. You will need a token, a download token. You need a kind of authentication. To get that started and configured, there's a button on top here, set download token. You get that token from the MyHCL software portal. There is on the right upper corner, once you're logged in, you have your initials. In my case, it's HA for HCL ambassadors. You click this button, then you get the create API key. It creates a key. It's a one-time copy key, which you then copy into the global configuration and save it. That key is a rotating key that changes on every request. So every server will need a separate token. So if you have multiple environments, you need one per environment. So let's have a look what we already had at 14.0. There is something called auto update distribute. The distribute functionality is available already in 14.0, but it has been enhanced a little bit in 14.5. You see in this dialog, and we will show this in demos a little bit later to give you all the details. You have a dialog that comes up when you select a single server or multiple servers. In this case, I selected 4 servers, and I selected the action distribute software only. And then I specify a version. In this case, I specify the latest and greatest version with the current interim fix, 14.0 fixpack 3 IF2. So this software catalog knows about interim fixes, not just the hotfix numbers, and you select it always by interim fix number. You see also on the same screen here something new that wasn't available in 14.0, server capabilities. So we introduced server capabilities because now servers can install software when you run on Windows and Linux. Before you could only distribute, and then it wasn't that important that we had capabilities, but now we distinct between 2 different modes, and we really need to know what each server can do and what each software is capable of doing, right? So for example, on AX in 14.0, you could only download, but now in 14.5, the newer WebKits can be distributed. So we changed gave the new WebKits the capabilities for AX for being able to distribute. So that's a new concept that we introduced in 14.5, server capabilities. One additional information which might be interesting here is we have 2 different schedules. They have been there in 14.0 already. We have the low priority in operations and we have the high priority operations. Why do we have this distinction? The low priority is really everything that connects to the internet and tries to download information, the product info, the software info, and we don't want that to happen every 5 minutes. So the default schedule for that is 60 minutes. If you want to change that interval, there's a node.ini parameter that you set on the Domino download server. We have the same for high priority work. There's an ini, and the default is 5 minutes. So everything else that is not connecting to the internet is on the high priority schedule. So each server and the download server, they all pull every 5 minutes by default. If you only want to have it triggered immediately, there is a tell command for tell auto update process low or high or both when you specify the all. So this helps especially when you do test the feature. You want things to happen immediately, right? In normal operations, you probably don't need it that much. Okay, that's the first part of the functionality, and now I hand it over to Dick to cover the functionality that we introduced in 14.5. Take it away, Dick.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you to all the attendees for your interest today. So the main 2 pieces that are introduced in 14.5 are actually being able to update Domino and also being able to live update the standalone app AutoInstall that actually orchestrates the install. So I'm going to talk about the first part, and then I'll hand it back to Daniel to talk about the AutoInstall part. So first, I'll just start off with a quick disclaimer. The 14.5 releases that are currently available are early access releases, and those are beta releases that aren't intended for production use. So this screenshot is showing part of a software document from the AutoUpdate.nsf database. And you can see that we put in red text at the top a warning. And that's sort of a general thing that we try to do in the design of the DB is to, put in red things that should be called to your attention. As far as you're all probably familiar with the recent December the 13th time date bug that's been, hotfixes have been provided for that. Auto update was not affected by that, so it will work even if that is not applied, but we still recommend that you patch the release. There are patches available for the early access to release in the EAP forum for both Windows and Linux. Next slide. So what we're looking at here is there's a software catalog view in the database, and this is showing you it. And I want to point out several things here. First of all, you can see that it's a categorized view. We categorize it by the software type, which server means Domino, and by the release, subcategorized by the release. But the first thing I want to call your attention to is the column just to the left of type, and that is the capabilities column, and this shows the software capabilities. So we have both the concept of software capabilities and server capabilities. And so the first one has an icon that indicates, the first one in the list that indicates that it can be installed. So it's a 14.5 release, it's Windows, and so it can be installed. The Linux one can similarly be installed. AIX has a different icon because it can be distributed, but we do not support automatic installs on AIX. And further down for 14.0, there's a different icon for AIX, which indicates that it can be downloaded only. So then the column where you see a green check mark, that green check mark is for software that has actually been downloaded. So you could have either marked the software for download, or you could have scheduled an install of a version and it would have automatically done the download for you. The icon that's got a little dash in it, a circle and a dash, that is an indicator of software that's no longer available. So when you see that, what it means is that the software is no longer available in the catalog, in the software catalog, but you previously downloaded it. And so we don't want to delete the documents on you since you previously downloaded them. But in this case, it was a case of an interim fix was released, but it needed another fix on top of it. So we stopped shipping the first interim fix and started shipping the second one. So under those types of conditions, we will no longer put the older release in the catalog. And the last thing I want to point out is the column between language and description. You can see the star icon there for several of them. That's showing you the latest, the ones that are the latest release. So we're showing you the latest release on 14.5, which is a release under development, and we're also showing you the latest for under the 14.0 stream, which is the latest stream that's production available. I think that's it for that slide. Next slide, Daniel. So there are actions in the UI, not shown in this slide, that allow you to schedule an update, an install of one or more servers. So in the first example on the left, this is showing an update of a single server. And you can see that the action that was chosen was schedule install. It specified the version that you want to install. And you can see that it has a few fields to schedule when you want the install to happen. So in this case, we want it to happen on the weekend, Saturday or Sunday, between pretty much any hours as specified here. You also could put in a start date or an end date. Like if you wanted to schedule something for a couple of weeks into the future, you could do that. And on the right-hand side is an example of where multiple servers were selected. That part isn't shown, but once you've selected the servers, you'd get this dialog. And you can also pick the action install now, and that will make it install pretty much immediately. And again, you request the version, and as Daniel pointed out earlier, the capabilities will show you that both servers have install capability. If one of them did not, for example, if one of them only had distribute, then we would do the install to the one server that supports it, and we would do only the distribute to the other server. And we'll show you a little bit later, there's also, even though you select install now, there are ways that you could order the install so that one server would install first, and when that completed successfully, the second one would go. Okay, next slide. So on the left, you can see the navigator there, and we're looking at the deployment history Domino view. That's a view that shows you a history of all the Domino installs that you've performed via auto update. And again, you can see well, they could be installs or they could be just distributes as well. So whether it's an install or a distribute, we will create a history document. So that's what you're seeing in the action column. And of course, the version column shows that the version that you either distributed or updated to. The little green check mark that you're seeing means that the install or distribute was successful. And I think Daniel might later have some examples of where you can show what a failure looks like. And in the reboot column, there'll be, there's an icon, I can't show you here on this, but if you hover over it, it will actually have some text associated with it. There are some cases that we'll talk about where a reboot's recommended, but your configuration did not specify a reboot. So we put that little icon there to warn you that you should do a reboot when you know, at your earliest convenience. Okay, next slide. So what we're looking at here is if you had double-clicked one of those documents in the view, this is the so-called history document or log. And you can see it's got some basic information like whether it succeeded or failed, what the prior version was and the new version. Now, in this case, for testing purposes, we allow you to update to the same version. So that's why both of those are the same. Normally, they would be different. But it also has information like the start time and the end time and how long it took. So here you see it took 232 seconds, which is, you know, what, about 4 minutes, I guess. The reboot status, you can see here, install anywhere for release installs can, on Windows, can sometimes either say that a reboot is recommended or that it is required. But whether we actually do the reboot is dependent on some configuration settings that I'll show you in a moment. So in this case, even though the reboot was recommended, it was disabled by the configuration, so we did not do it. And so we put this red text here again to warn you that a reboot was recommended and that you should do it at the next convenient time. And then finally, if you look down, there'll be several logs installed. And this is probably like the simplest case. You're always going to see an install log, which is the actual log from the auto install program that orchestrates the installs. And that has all the detailed information of all the steps it went through. And the log on the right that you're seeing is the actual Domino install anywhere log from install anywhere. Or if it was for fix packs or hot fixes, it would be from those installers. And if there can be more logs, like I said, because, for example, if you're updating, you know, let's say from 14.0 to 14.5 fix pack 1 in the future, then you have to install both a base release and a fix pack. So there would be 2 separate installs and there'd be 2 separate install logs for them. And also, if we run into any problems, for example, if there's an NSD that occurs during shutdown or the JVM patcher fails to patch something, then we will attach additional logs to this history document. Okay, next slide, Daniel. Here's the reboot options that I was talking about. Again, on Windows only, sometimes the installers either recommend or require a reboot. This could be because there was a reboot already pending from some other previous installs, or it could be the Domino installation itself that required a reboot. So on the right-hand side here, we're looking at a server document in autoupdate.nsf, and it has a field here for OS reboot options. This is one place where we would like some feedback. We want feedback everywhere, obviously, but we've been sort of around and around on trying to simplify these options. But then when we try to simplify them, people want the ones back. So we currently have these 4 options, which are never reboot after install. So even if install anywhere recommends or requires it, we would still not reboot. Then there's one to reboot if recommended or required, reboot only if required, or there's also an option for always reboot, because there are administrators that just for safety's sake and to start clean like to reboot after an installation. So that's there for that purpose. I think earlier, I think I showed you the reboot icon in the view. And if you do see the exclamation mark there, it's because these reboot options prevented us from doing a reboot, but you should do one later. And also, a last thing to mention here is that in the auto installer log that's part of the history, we will dump out the pending file renames or deletes that are causing the need for a reboot, so that you have that at your disposal if you care to look into it and see the details. Okay, next. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about requirements. There are some requirements for using auto install. First, the server must be a platform that we support for install, which is currently Windows or Linux only, not AIX or OS 400. The auto install program itself, that's the thing that orchestrates the install. It must be available, and it must be running as a service on Windows or with SUID permissions set on Linux. And I'll talk a bit more about that in just a second. There has to be sufficient disk space, and we fix that at least 2 gigabytes for the binary directory and at least 5 gig for the data directory. Partition servers and containers are not supported for install. So they only support distribute. You can distribute to those servers, but then you would have to manually do the install steps. Also, the Domino server itself must be started as a service. So that would mean as a Windows service on Windows or as systemd on Linux. And that's because we need to be able to control the start and stop of the server in a predictable way, and also have it restart after a reboot. So if any of these requirements are missing, then you would see in your server document that the capabilities would say distribute instead of install. So it might, for example, be a Windows server, but you don't have Domino running as a service. So instead of having install capability, it would be distribute. But when there are issues like this, there's a missing requirements field. It's normally a hidden field, but when we have something to display there, it will show in the server document. And this will show you why. Like in this case, it was a Linux server, and the SUID bit was not set on the auto install program, so that we would not be able to perform installs. Okay, next slide. So again, a little more detail on the requirement that we run as a service. As I said, there has to be a defined and predictable way for us to stop and restart a Domino server. And furthermore, we need it to restart after a reboot. So that's why we require that on Windows, it's running as a service. On Linux, it's a systemd service. And then we can use the defined interfaces on those platforms to shut down the service cleanly, which we do before we initiate the update. And then similarly, after a successful update or even an unsuccessful update, we are going to cleanly restart the server. And yeah, that's good. Thank you, Daniel. So I'll say a little bit about the Domino auto install program itself. Now this is a separate binary. It's a standalone binary. It does not use any Domino binaries, so it's completely standalone. And whereas the Domino server itself, it's a best practice to run as an unprivileged user. So on Linux, it's typically running under the notes user. And on Windows, we recommend, since Domino 14.0, to run as the local service account, which is not a privileged account. But on the other hand, installations, we require permissions, okay? So the auto install binary itself, which is autoinstall.exe on Windows or autoinstall on Linux, it has to, as we said, run as a service on Windows. On Linux, it has to have the suid bit set so that when Domino invokes it, it will become root essentially, and it will have the permissions necessary for install. Now, this binary initially is installed by Domino install anywhere. So the very first time that you do an install where the program does not yet exist, the installer will install it. But thereafter, it has a dynamic update that Daniel is going to mention coming up. So you can see that on Windows, the screenshot here shows you that on Windows, the autoinstall.exe has to be running as a service, and its name shows up as the HCL Domino auto update / install service. Okay, next slide. So this slide shows the overall flow. Performing an install is a cooperation between the auto update task running on Domino and the auto install standalone program. So the first 3 steps on the left happen, and then all the steps on the right happen in the middle, and then the last 3 steps happen. So let me quickly go through those. So first of all, auto update will distribute the software to the target server, or the target server distributes the software to itself essentially. And also, if the software hadn't yet been downloaded, then the download server would download it before the distribute. Then when the install is requested, or when the scheduled time comes up, auto update will create a request file, autoinstall.req. Now on Windows, that is the trigger for auto install, because on Windows, the auto install is installed as a service, and it is polling for requests to appear. And so when the request appears, it will start to process it. But on Linux, it's launched directly by auto update. So at that point, auto install takes control. So we look over on the right-hand side of the chart here. And first of all, it's going to read and validate the request file. Then it's also going to validate the files that have been distributed. So what it does there is it will find the file in software.jwt. It will recalculate the checksum of the file, and it will make sure that it matches with the hash and the size that's in software.jwt. So this is a way so that this is a security measure so that someone can't fake us into installing something that's not a valid kit, okay? And also, you can't fake a software.jwt because it's signed and the baked-in signature has to be used. You can't sign it with some other key. So anyway, we have extra steps to do the validation, but once we're ready to go, we shut down Domino. And by the way, if say that didn't happen cleanly and an NSD occurred, then we would wait for the NSD. We would wait till the processes were cleaned up, and we would not do the install, and we would fail the install. But assuming that the shutdown succeeds, we'll launch the installers. Again, we might have to launch more than one installer. We might be doing, for example, a base release followed by a hotfix. And then after each installer, we'll check the results of the install. If it failed, we'll stop immediately, but if it succeeded, we'll go on and do the next install if it's needed. And assuming everything works okay, we restart Domino, or if the if Install Anywhere on Windows said that a reboot was recommended or required and your settings allowed it, then we will actually do the reboot. But one way or another, Domino will come back up. So we return to the left side of the diagram, step 4. The auto update task will come back up. It will find the presence of a status file that tells it that the install attempt is complete. It will update the server document with the results, success or failure, and it will create the history document that we showed earlier. So that's the entire flow. And a word about the auto update history. In each server document, we showed the basics tab earlier. This is the update history tab. And this shows, this is an embedded view that shows all of a history of all the installs that have been done for this server. In the action column, the ones that you see that say install were an install of Domino. The ones that say auto install update are updates of the auto install binary itself. Normally you wouldn't see those as often as you see here, but when we're running daily builds, we have updates daily. The green check mark is an indicator that it was successful. There would be a red icon if it was a failure. And you also see how long it took to execute here in the view. And also each attempt is given a unique deploy ID, so that's also shown in the view here. There is a separate view that shows history for all servers. So you can also look there. It's categorized by server by default, but you can also sort it by time. So that's another view that can come in handy. Okay, so that's what I had to say about the auto update portions. Now I'm going to hand it back to Daniel to talk about auto install a little bit more.
Thanks, Dick. So we are going to look into this in a live demo afterwards, but Dick, what happens when the auto install binary needs to be updated itself? So you can't, like, it's a chicken and egg problem here, right? So you said that the install anywhere will install the auto install binary first, but while it's running, how can it update itself? That's pretty a difficult situation, right? So we might run into the situation that in future, before we run an update, when like the next Domino release comes out, maybe we forgot something or something changed and needs to be updated, but we need to update the auto install eventually first before updating the software. And that's like a sort of mission impossible, but I think we found a good way here. We invented something for ourselves that we call like live self-patching. So the auto install binary is running and updates itself. It's even updating itself without needing for a schedule because we want it always to be updated. So it was first installed and brought into place. It's running as a service, or it has a ZUID set, and then it could be invoked anytime. So because install anywhere would not be able to install it while it's running, and we are running it, we had to find a way to update itself. So it will be distributed by auto update, as Dick explained for the WebKits, for the normal WebKits. The binary is also located on the MyHCL software server, and it's automatically downloaded for you. It's distributed. There is no request. It's just all done automatically by the auto update task. The auto update task on every server knows this request, It knows the files, it knows all the logic, and it will do the operation. Once done, it also creates a history document, as Dick said. It is just a second separate view here in the deployment history that you see now. So we have Domino installs and you have auto-install installs. And as Dick showed before, in the history doc view for each server, you see both combined. So I will show that in a view afterwards, but this is the functionality. So in here you see the history documents, and they are also ordered by server. And you can click on top, as Dick said, for the Domino installation. You can click on it, and then it's sorted on the fly by date. What we have introduced in 14.0 already, but what wasn't really something that we used, is the install order that Dick mentioned earlier. So we have a way to define the order in which the updates will happen. So you can schedule them all at once, and then you can define in which order they should be installed. And this install order is not one-by-one relationship. So you can have multiple servers in each install order. You can see it as an installation wave. So in our case here, we put Tux and Ray as the first order. We put Linux as the second one, and then we have two other servers in the third order. So as Dick indicated earlier, we will first go and install the first servers, and when they all succeed, we are going to the next order. That also means if you have a pilot group, you can just give them the one, assign the one to them, and then they would run first. If they are successful, we would automatically go to the second order that is filled. In this case, is the number 2. So that means whenever a problem occurs, we stop all deployments and we keep all the servers up, because we don't want to have like a domino effect of multiple servers failing. So usually this works really, really well. We are running this for over a year already in production in HCL. And we first decided to ship the auto update feature in 14.0, make that rock solid as the base foundation of everything. And now in 14.5, we are shipping the auto install part of the feature. We have another concept which we already introduced in 14.0, and I just want to mention it here again. We have the concept of a deployment group. This is really something that is optional and additional, and it can be combined with the install orders. So the idea behind the deployment groups is really that you want to group servers that you want to get automatically scheduled. So you, instead of selecting single servers or a couple of servers, you can put them all into deployment groups and then schedule a deployment group instead of scheduling a list of servers that you manually select. So it's really the concept of in a larger environment where you want to group servers into different distributions. The interesting part here is we have the concept of a deploy ID. So when you schedule an installation, each installation that you select for one server, for multiple servers, for a deployment group gets a deployment ID. That means all the server in this deployment that you selected will work together, right? They will respect their deploy order and do all the scheduling among them. So you can have multiple deployments kicked off at the same time in parallel for different deployment groups. So those two concepts can be combined in any way that you want, and they work on the one side independently, on the other side hand in hand, right? But when you start with like single servers, multiple servers selected, and then the next stage would be run with deployment groups. Okay, one next part that we also introduced in Early Access 2, it wasn't available in Early Access 1, is the installation of fix packs and interim fixes. So Dick has shown in the screenshots already that we have support for fix packs and interim fixes, and I will show you around when I do the demos how this looks and feels. But how do you install and do something like test something that is not even available? So we don't have a release that supports fix packs and interims fixes of a 14.5, right? So how can we test this? So we sat together and thought like maybe we need to do something like mock installer, something that looks like a real installer, but it really does nothing than simulating an installation, because a problem here is what you could in theory go from 14.5 to 14.0, but then not all the components would be in place to carry on with collecting the history information and creating the history document in the correct way. We had this in place, almost done, but it wasn't complete. So the process that Dick described was like picking up the work and doing the history document wasn't complete. So when you downgrade to a 14.0 server, this logic is not complete. So we came up with those mock installers, and those mock installers do the same thing as an installer, but they don't really install software. And the advantage here is they are a lot faster as well. They have the same parameters and everything, and we can mock them. We can say, oh, this installation should fail, and then we can simulate what's going to happen, and all the other logic is performed, and we have a way for automation testing. So those mock installers are really helpful in many ways, and I'm going to show you a demo with a 14.7 release that is not a real release, but we will show you exactly how this looks and feels. But before we go there, I have a really brief description of what is a release, what is a fix pack, and what is an interim fix and a hot fix. I will not go into all details. I just give you the basic concepts. Here, so a release is really a new major release with new features. It has a release number. It is a different code stream. You see that here, right now, we are in code stream 14.5.0 underscore and then a date number. So this is what you see in the early access. That's the early access 2 build. And that turns later into the 14.5 release. So every this is using semantic numbering. So you have really a defined release version. It contains new features, it contains new templates, and it's using an install anywhere installer. A fix pack, in contrast, is a known installer. It only ships parts of the software. It ships the code and maybe forms NSF and for inodes. It's a different installer. It works a little bit different. It installs software, but it has a different parameter set, and Auto Update knows about the differences here. It knows the release installer, it knows the fixpack installer, and in addition, it also knows the hotfix installer. A hotfix installer is just installing a simple fix, usually just one SPR or like a couple of SPRs, maybe 2 or 3 SPRs. We call that a combo hotfix. But this is really the exception, and it's not a real downloadable software from my HCL software portal. It's per customer, and you get this separate, and you have to install it separate, and you have to install it manually. We can't install this automated because it is not in the software JWT that Dick and I were speaking about earlier, right? So it's really a manual process. Once you installed it and you need to go to the next fix pack, you have to uninstall it on your own. This is the only exception that we have here. Hotfixes are a manual process. But there is something called IF, an interim fix that most of you know since last year at least. So an interim fix is technically a hotfix, but it has been built by HCL for all releases, and it's distributed on the MyHCL software portal. And the contrast here is we know about it and we can install and uninstall it automatically for you. So an interim fix is technically a hotfix, but it gets a different naming convention. And the only difference that you really see is the file name. When it's installed, it has a hotfix number. And this is like a little bit of a dilemma. So we came up with something in AutoUpdate. AutoUpdate knows exactly the relationship between the interim fixes and the hotfixes, and I'll show that to you in a minute. So we really want to move here in a minute from showing you slides and giving you a live demo. And the live demo will finally end with questions, and we can keep the demo up, and we can show you maybe some of the functionality where you ask questions directly live. So this is really a recap what you will see. I will move over to the demo and start over here. I'm going to start with an error case because Dick asked me if I can show an error case. Of course I can, because we have simulation. I prepared a server to not shut down cleanly to show you what happens in this case. So Dick said we're going to collect NSDs and all this kind of information. Let me see if we can deliver what we promised. So first of all, here the server document shows the status. Sadly, the GoToMeeting prevents me from showing the tooltips. So usually when you hover over, you see exactly what it is. It would say unscheduled, it would say error. Here it would say needs reboot, and all those icons usually are animated with the tooltip, which gives you a text. But I can't demo that with the GoToMeeting. So if you do this in your environment, you will see text hover over here. So let's open the document and see if we see more. So when you open the document, you see the status here. And what we tried is to always give you a reasonable error code. Probably this needs a little bit of reformatting because it got too long. Maybe we make that a little bit nice in the UI. But you see, you get exact information, including the NSD information. So now in here, you see the configuration of the server and everything. You see the setting that Dick mentioned, reboot only if required. And here is the update history. So in my update history, I see distributes, I see installations, and this last installation failed. So it had a runtime of 237 seconds because it couldn't shut down. It wasn't a finished installation. I know what it is, so I can tell you, but you will figure out from here. You open this document and you see what happened. And here is the installation log. And as promised, here's your NSD. So we don't need to open the NSD, but maybe we want to open an install log. The install log has all the details. First of all, what we do is, as Dick mentioned, we create a request file. And that request file will be dumped into this document. You see this in multiple places in this document, here in this log file. We are dumping information into the same document. So instead of giving you all those different files, we give you one file with all information in it. Only the installer logs, the install anywhere log and the fixback and interim fix log is separate, but everything that belongs to the installation will be in one file. So it's the single truth of information. So we don't need to go into all the details, but you get the system information that helps us to help you in case of a problem. You get CPU information, you get disk information, free space, the environment, the nodes INI. So it's almost like an NSD with all that information, but it is for our feature and not for the server itself, right? This is the functionality that we have in here. You will see which processes are started. You will see the different steps. I don't think we need to go into all the details. There is a ton of information in here that helps us to find out what's going on. Here you see, for example, the installer properties file that we wrote for an installation. So it's all there to be looked at if needed. But don't worry, you don't need to look into this on your own in most cases. It's all green in most cases. So we have like a success rate right now for 98% at least or higher in our deployment environments among multiple environments. So this is a very simple example. This is a failure, but I don't want to just show you failures. Let's go back and I show you what you need to do next. So if you have a failure, you can't schedule a deployment anymore because it's not in unscheduled state. The first thing you need to do is reset the deployment. There's a button over here. You just click it. It's asking you if you want to reset. Then it's reset and it's back to normal. The database usually doesn't have unread marks enabled. I enabled it for demo purposes and also for testing. So the database works with unread marks, but it doesn't ship with unread marks enabled on purpose. So usually you don't need that, but for testing, it's a very nice way to see what changed, right? And for us, this is also helpful to find out, are documents updated too often? If they're all read, you find out, oh, the documents are updated all the time. Let's schedule an update. Before we go to fancy updates with multiple with a fix pack and the interim fix, let's schedule a couple of servers because they take some time to be installed, and I will come back to them afterwards. So let's take multiple servers. Let's take this guy, this guy, this guy. This is a Windows server. I try to schedule a deployment, and it says I would install for 2 servers and distribute to 1 server. Why does this 1 server only have a distribute? This Linux server is a server that's running inside a container. So when you open the document, you see the server type is a Podman container. It's running Red Hat Enterprise Linux inside. That's the UBI 9.5, but it's running on Podman, so we can't install it. So this guy would be downgraded to only having a distribute. Let me run this for you, and we will come back to this in a minute. So here you see it says installed, scheduled for 2 servers, and it says trigger distribute for 1 server. So what is the difference here? Schedule is something that is really scheduled. So as Dick said, installations are scheduled. You can say run now, but this is also a schedule. This is a run immediately, but it's also a schedule, right? It has multiple steps. A trigger distribute means software is triggered to be distributed, and that distribution doesn't need to be scheduled because it can be run for all servers at the same time, because we want to always distribute quickly. It doesn't interrupt your server operations. It's just putting some software on the server, right? That's why it is trigger and schedule. So at that moment, now you see here that they are in scheduled state. So you see the icon always, and you see the text. And when you hover to this active deployments, you see it in more details. You see exactly what's going on. You only see the servers that are active. And it will take a moment to kick in, and then you see those actions moving. You will see that the software distribution is starting, and then step by step, you can really watch the progress here. But that will take a moment because the software first needs to be distributed. If you would look on the server and you do a show task, you would actually see in auto update what it's actually doing at the moment. So the auto update server task gets an update in its status depending on what it is. Okay, let's keep that for a while and see that it's running. We will come back to it and you will see it will do its operations. Let's switch to another environment that I have prepared. That's one of our internal servers for testing. This guy was running early access to the Linux lab, the Dino Club. But this guy is a daily build server. It takes a moment to open. It's running yesterday's build. And I will show you how we are going to install a fixback and an interim fix and a new release. First of all, let's have a look at the software documents. In the software documents, you see here that we have a 14.7, which will never be released this way. We just made that up, right? We picked a version that will very likely not be there. We have a fixback 1 for this version. We have an interim fix 2 for this version. And when you open the documents, you see that this is test data, and this file is really small. It's just a couple of bytes. It's just 40K. But it's a real binary that can be executed. It has a hash and a checksum and everything. So we can verify it, and it has its own it's meeting our requirements to be installed. It's also signed. Windows files are always signed. We validate the signature. And all of that will happen. The only thing that will not happen is we will not install any software. So let's have a look. Let's take this server. I schedule a deployment. And I promise that you can pick this by interim fix, right? So here you go. You pick the interim fix. And it says server capabilities install. We submit it. Scheduled install for one server. Now this server is scheduled, and you will see it also in the active server views. It will be probably pretty quick to change states. So I will click it a couple of times. And then at some point it will stop responding because that's also the auto update server. So we have to be really quick. Might take a moment to kick in. But now you see it has the flash, and the flash means if I'm lucky I can open it still. No, it's already gone, right? Because it doesn't need to deploy software, a large software package, it is immediately down for installation. So that takes like a minute or two to be back. So maybe we switch back to the other domain and see what's going on here. You see this server is now in pending install. Why is it in pending install? Because it has the deployment order of 3. And here we have this server being updated, installing, it's in installing state. And when this server is done, the other server will be installed next, right? So you see that in here. If you have many servers, you will see them all in this list, and you can watch the status moving from one to another. So this will take a while because those are real installs. Let's switch back to our test installation. It's not yet back. Yeah, now it's back online. So you see it's back into unscheduled state. So we are unscheduled. You see the target version is IF2, and it's actually hotfix 2. You also see the history document. You should get all that information in the history document as well. Here in that view, you see that information. We have both in the view in the document. I think this is an older version that doesn't have that yet. And then here you see an installation log. You see the Domino release install, you see the fixspec install, and you see the hotfix install as Dick indicated earlier. So this is really the demo to show you everything end to end. We could show you around. If you have questions, we would switch to questions, but we keep the screen share on, if that's okay, Graham. And we could answer some questions along with showing it on screen.
Yep,
This was a
that's great.
basic demo of everything. We could show, if we have specific questions, we can show that too.
Okay,
here.
well, why don't we start with the questions we've got, but I'll remind everybody that you can use the questions panel to ask your questions. And let's take the ones that we've got, and if that spawns other ideas or things to show, then we've got time. We've got about 15 minutes left in our time slot. So the first one was the one that was asked before the webinar even started. I'll ask it and then let you guys take it. If the auto install server and the servers I'd like to auto update are on program code 14.5, but system databases remain on 12.02, would it be possible to use the auto install feature? Auto update.nsf would be 14.5, of course.
I can take that quickly. So as we have shown at the very beginning of the presentation, you need to be able to change the profile document to have auto update, right? So we would need to go back and see if we have this in there hidden. I think we don't have that. So you would have you don't have a trigger for auto update for the install functionality to be triggered. So if you change that manually with an agent, there is nothing in the Domino directory that prevents you from running the functionality. However, the recommendation is to put system databases always to the latest release. You start with the admin server of the domain, provide the latest template. All the downgrade level servers are able, it's designed like this, they are able to run with the newer version of the system database. So it's always recommended. But for auto update itself, the only preventing factor would be that you could not change the profile document to the right value.
Yeah. Okay. The next question is an interesting one. I think it assumes a multi-server environment. The question is it possible for the main server to update itself? And certainly in a single server environment, the answer would be yes, but I'll let you expand on that.
Yeah, that's something that I mentioned, by the way, earlier. So yes, the auto update server can update itself. We have done a lot of testing in the internal deployment because all the servers are clustered, and the server can update itself. We recommend it to be scheduled separately than the other servers because you can have race conditions. Even in a cluster, you can have race conditions. So we recommend to run this first or last. You can put it even into the same deployment order and put it then with a 999 or something. That would work, but probably it's best to update it separately. But yes, it's fully supported. You can update the server itself, so that will work. Because it will first schedule its own deployment, as Dick explained earlier, and then it will do its operation. So it has both functionality. It has the designated download server functionality, scheduling everything for itself, and then it is acting as a target server, which then executes the operation and afterwards writes its own history document, and it's done.
Yeah. And obviously in a single server scenario, you would let it download whenever you want, but schedule that update for presumably overnight.
Yeah, actually, I showed that this auto update server is the main server, right?
Yep.
It's not one of the servers. It is the designated server.
Perfect. I'm not sure I understand this question, but I'll ask it as typed. And the person who asked it is no longer on the call, so I can't clarify. Can adding the design task be disabled?
Yeah, the design task is one of the server tasks that is by default in the server tasks line in the nodes INI. You can change that so by default it's there, and you change that and remove it and can run it separately, but we really want the system databases to be updated. And in fact, there is a discussion going on in the early access forum that people want to have all system databases updated. So we have new system databases like auto update. And in fact, we have a meeting like after the session exactly about that, what the strategy is for that. So we want also probably system databases, more system databases beside names, admin4, log, mail.box be updated automatically. But this is not right now only happening when the design task is running. And it's not on for every customer. So sorry for tweaking the question, but I'm using the opportunity to give you a little bit more background about this.
Yeah.
The design
Yeah.
test can be disabled by just removing it from the nodes INI setting, but it would come back usually when you update to the server to the latest version. But there is an ini setting that is in the product since release 5. Thomas Gums put that in for us as a feedback in the business partner forum long time ago. I recall that there's a server setup leave server task equal 1, which Christian Hensler just
Yeah.
mentioned
Yeah, I see that.
in the questions, right? So I can put that maybe into the slide deck afterwards as another slide. But we really want to look into this a little bit more deeper, right?
What you're really
So,
saying is that you would prefer that design be an active task, but that the auto update process, other than major releases, doesn't change that setting.
right, the major a release update will change the setting if you don't put setup leave server task equal 1. But
There we
what
go.
we really want is that system databases are always updated.
Mm,
There are many more databases that might get updated when you run the design task. So when you run load design without any parameters, it would go over your server and update all the databases. And in this case, the admin who asked the question probably does want to prevent that.
yeah, yeah. Okay, that's an interesting challenge.
No, it's an interesting question, right? So it
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
simple question, but it has multiple tweaks here, right? Multiple dimensions.
All right, and the next question from Christian: when software is re-released by HCL with the same version, how is this recognized by the auto update install? Is that
So
actually a thing? Are the same version
It,
numbers used?
it does happen. There'll be a unique file ID, which
Mm,
is the
okay,
discriminator between the two. It's rare that it happens, but it could happen. But
okay.
they would be separate files on the system.
yeah, when you look at this, what Gary is saying, let me open a document. So what Gary is saying, we have a file name. The file name is here. You have a file ID. In this case, it's a mock file ID. Usually that's a random number unique random number that they create. But the more interesting point here is if you would re-release the same file with the same file name, then how would a customer know when they download the file that the file has changed? So this is not only an auto update question. This means like when you when you pull back a version and you re-release it, you should not only have a different file ID, but you should also use a different file name, because beside auto update, there's other functionality that you might have in place, like manual updates, or you would download it somewhere. So how would you know what it is, right? So every re-release of a software should have a different distinct file name with like putting a suffix to it or whatever. So
Right, but what Gary's saying is that that file ID value will be different.
yeah, that will be different
Yeah.
of course, and we will like remove the old file. And what Dick was saying earlier, you see those files have been removed from the software list. They are still here, and when you delete this document, or when you can delete software here, or when you go to downloads, here you see downloaded software. This is only downloaded software. Here you see all software. In this case, they are all downloaded, but here you would only see the software that is downloaded. If you have something that is not downloaded, it will not show here. But here, this guy can be only, the whole document can be only removed. And so this, when you do the remove, this guy would say, oh, I can't remove it because that would not be able to be recoverable. Where when you say delete the software document, you are really making an active choice to delete it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's gone forever because it can't be downloaded anymore. Right? When I go here and delete it, it's just gone. But then you get a question if you really, really want to delete it.
Okay, that's it for our questions. I got two other things quickly. Roberto posted a link to one of your blogs, Daniel, in the chat for everybody that's on the call, and we can include that in the description when we post this on YouTube. But it's the Release Fix Pack Interim, What Is It and How to Install blog post that is relevant for folks, so we'll include that. And I think both Gary and Dick mentioned wanting people's feedback. So I'll ask, what's the best way to send feedback if somebody has been playing around with this and wants to either ask for some features or bottom line, what's the best way to send you guys the feedback?
So first of all, here's the question, answer, and feedback slide.
Perfect.
So we have a link in here. So the early access program is really the place to be. This is the direct channel to Gary, Dick, and me, and all the other developers. So everyone in HCL is monitoring this forum, and we really want feedback about this functionality. Even this is now feature complete, we want your feedback. And we ask many questions, like the reboot discussion that Dick mentioned. We asked questions about it. So we didn't wait for people to ask. We wanted to really know if we are on the right track.
Also, AHA is a standard mechanism for communicating with product management in terms of, I really want something, the EA forum won't last forever, right? But if there's really a new feature, a new function that you need, it would go through AHA.
Yeah, we can put the link also on the slide. I will update that afterwards.
Yeah, we can put that in as well. Excellent. Christian just chimed back in on the same version number thing. He said that there was a release in the 11.01 code stream that duplicated the number.
Yeah, but we learned from it, right? So the auto update functionality also puts us into a different spot here. It helps us also to really understand in more detail what happens out there. I just want to mention one thing. We have additional material. So if you we put example errors, right? Those are not problems in the software. Those are all the different kind of things that can happen, that can go wrong. And we put screenshots for almost everything, like insufficient disk space with all the details. The SUIT bit set, we had that already. Here is the auto install service is not running. and all those kind of errors. We put that in here. We didn't want to go through all the details, but here's one final. When you have a custom hotfix installed, we know about it, and we give you detailed information what to do, right? So this is all designed with like admin in mind. So we want admins to exactly know what's going on with all the history documents, with all the on-screen information. So this is additional material here, but it's also for you as a reference to see what we did.
Excellent. Well, thank you to everyone. We'll wrap it up there. These slides will be available. Daniel's going to send them to me, and I will post them up on the webinars page for download. And again, this will be posted up to YouTube shortly. Thanks, everyone, for your participation. And Dick, Gary, and Daniel, thank you very much for this presentation. This was wonderful. Everybody, have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Same
Thank
to
you.
all of you.